there are so many different ways that stem cells can heal, like kids with autism and different chronic injuries and broken bones and that sort of thing. So it's just like, if people knew more about it, they would be informed and they would have the information.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Joy Kong from Uplift Longevity Center. I'm also the president of Charo Biologics, where we actually provide stem cell products to patients. So I just want to introduce Eddie here is one of the patients who have received stem cells, and he has, some interesting perspectives I think will be really helpful to share with everybody. So Eddie, I'm excited to speak with you.
Yeah, thanks. I do. I've kind of had a transformation in my own life, health-wise, to be more health-focused. And I guess since 2020, I had kind of a transformation with my own life, and I've improved my health and tried to live a better lifestyle and get better sleep. And then I had a very traumatic experience. I was in a foreign country and had a big injury. It was the most pain I've felt in quite a long time. And just blunt trauma force to my feet. Impact, doing kind of a parkour thing in Cappadocia, Turkey on vacation. And for the first time in my life, I thought, okay, I'm going to heal from this in a few days. It's going to get better. And I went to see the doctor in Chicago and they said, oh, you're going to be fine. And then, it turned out it wasn't. And then, for about 2 months later, I went to see another doctor and they said, a podiatrist, and I said, oh yeah, you've been walking for 2 months on broken feet and it's probably messing up with your fascia. And so finally I got some boots on there and then I thought, okay, now I'm going to heal. And it'll be good in just a few days or a few weeks. And months went by and I would talk to guys who had feet injuries and professional skateboarder and my hairstylist. And he said, they were talking about their feet injuries for multiple years. I thought, I cannot afford to be talking about this for 2 or 5 years from now. So, tried to find different solutions. And luckily I came across, you. I don't know exactly how, but it was like, I kind of lost hope for being able to do the simple things like, go running with my friends. Like so many times my buddies would say, hey, let's go hiking. I thought, not yet. So, that just went on and on and on for several months. And to go from my bedroom to my home office, I would want to, sit down and take a break in the living room. And it was just something where, like, is this me? This is totally not my identity of someone who is just going to be incapable of doing what I've been doing for decades. Running around, going hiking, climbing trees. I thought, man, am I never going to be able to go running with my kids someday? So all these different thoughts were going through my head, which is kind of depressive thoughts, and you get, trapped into that. So, that's kind of the backstory. And then once I discovered, that stem cells might be an option, and in my mind, it felt so risky because it was so new and just sort of uncharted territory. And I know that my understanding is that they've been using some form of stem cells for a while, and then is it Yakamoto? He's a guy who won a Nobel Prize for stem cell discoveries and just the healing factor. And so I thought, well, I've heard enough about the studies. I'm going to give it a shot. And that's why the source of the stem cells was from you, wherever you got them. Not sure exactly.
It's from an umbilical cord. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Newborn babies, healthy newborns, and then the stem cells are extracted from the umbilical cord.
Yes. And that's actually important to me because I have nieces and nephews who were frozen for 5 and 7 years. And then my sister was able to give birth to them, through adoption process, like the snowflake process. And so when I told them, I was like, yeah, and I'm using stem cells to heal my feet. And they're like, Uncle Eddie, what? And I said, no, it's from an umbilical cord. Yeah. So that's a big distinction to go from there.
So how long were you, kind of incapacitated in a sense before you got stem cells?
9 months.
Okay.
So just imagine for 9 months being, I don't know, just like not knowing that, like, uncertainty in psychological terms is very taxing on our body and our minds. And just for 9 months, I thought, well, ever the optimist, I thought, well, something is out there that's going to be able to work.
And you're a young guy.
Yeah.
Just you're eating healthy. You're taking good care of yourself. Right. So it's surprising that it wasn't healing.
Yes. And this injury, I thought, well, I've been injured before, broken bones, and they healed in a matter of weeks. And 6 weeks is how long it takes for a bone to break. But this chronic injury was just taking over my life. And I thought, well, I've been talking to guys who had injuries for 5 years, and they would go jogging, and then their feet would hurt when they were jogging. And the next day they didn't want to be on the feet at all. I thought, that's how I am when I want to go to the Costco, And so is that my life for the rest of my life? I'm just going to be one of those guys who just has to sit down whenever they're at a dinner party. And if I go to a concert, I have to bring a chair. Like I was going to Burning Man. I'm like, I'm going to have to bring a stool to watch people play music. And I thought, is this the rest of my life? So
how were the stem cells given to you?
Got IV, and then I don't know how many cc's, maybe 3 cc's through IV, and then like a half and a half in the feet and each foot. And yeah, so that was really kind of a neat process.
Yeah. So what did you notice after the treatment? I mean, did you notice anything the day of?
Well, the day of, if you get something injected in your feet, obviously it's going to hurt. And so just kind of rested, that day, that evening. The next day, was just kind of feeling like a normal day, not sure what to feel. But 1 week after, I felt like running, like my body just wanted to go run. And I guess that's because the inflammation was lowered. And I think I got the advice of, okay, don't do anything for 6 weeks, just let the stem cells do their job and do their work. But I was able to I think it was 2 months later, I went to an event, and I was still just not wanting to do too much on them. But I was able to go running and jumping and dancing. And I thought, this is magic. I was telling a friend just about an hour ago, that when I was walking through the gym and going from one machine to the other, and I would literally go from one machine and do the machines where I had to sit down to do the workout. And I remember going from one machine to the other, soon after those process, and I thought, I'm not thinking about my feet right now. And that was just a realization that because I wasn't thinking about my feet in those few steps, I had been thinking about every step for 9 months and how much pain that was, just absorbing, and all the mental bandwidth going towards this sucks, So,
within a week, that's pretty remarkable after 9 months.
Yes. I mean, that's why I just remember looking down the sidewalk. I was like, I just want to go run. But they said, don't run, take it easy for a little while.
It's interesting. I tell people give it at least 6 weeks, for soft tissue, for bone, maybe a little longer. So I did treat a patient who had ligament tear on the bottom of his foot, and he's a triathlete. So running was very important to him. So he was able to stay off his feet for 2 months. So that was, really appreciated when patients, do what you ask them to do. I really appreciate it. So he was able to have that healed after 2 podiatrists telling him that he absolutely needed surgery. And he didn't do it because of, the potential side effects and the downside and the possibility of changing the shape of his foot. So he didn't want to go through that. And with the stem cells, it's pretty remarkable. Within 3 months, he did an Ironman. So he did go ahead and put the stress on the tissue, and apparently it's fully healed.
That's incredible. It's stories like that. Like my brother Brian, he does consulting for Ironman. He runs his own Ironman. And I know that there's so many people, like one of the reasons why I'm so happy to be talking about this and sharing it with everybody is because this anecdotally helped me. And because I keep hearing stories about people who have had stem cells from your source, I am just, I feel like I'd be rude not to try to get this out and share it because I know people who have had back injuries and chronic back injuries and, different ailments. And there are so many different ways that stem cells can heal, like kids with autism and different just like chronic injuries and broken bones or car wrecks and that sort of thing. So it's just like if people knew more about it, they would be informed and they would have the information. Yes.
Yeah. And of course, there's, a lot of restrictions in the sense that certain things can be talked about, certain things cannot, because there's no FDA approval for any conditions beyond hemoreconstitution. So reconstitute the blood, all the blood components of blood cells. And that's the only FDA approval. But if you talk about anything else, you can't make any claims. You can't claim that you can treat or cure anything, beyond that hemoreconstitution. But also, yes, any new form of therapy, because especially when it's a challenge to the existing system, there's no big profits that can be made by big pharma. And then the fact that people are getting well so fast and so completely, and they are not needing surgeries or medications, I think it does pose as a threat to the existing system. So the fact that doctors can't advertise, that they are using stem cells on Google, on Facebook, on Instagram. Mm-hmm. So if you tried to run an ad, they would just shut it down. They would not let you. So those are buzzwords of basically no.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense, because that's probably why I felt it was such a big risk, is because you couldn't have people advertising the experiences they've had, because it is anecdotal until you have the FDA approval saying like, yes, this is safe to use and work and that sort of thing. But I've always been like a cutting edge person, like the first person to use Uber and all these different things. So it's like
when it was illegal.
Yeah.
Or PayPal.
Back when it was like only super expensive in New York or something. But yeah, it is nice to sort of be a tip of the spear so that I can see what works and what doesn't and why. And I'm like, like I said, I would feel so rude if I didn't try to share it with people and make it known. Mm-hmm. But I can say, hey, it really worked for me. And, I can literally stand by that statement.
I think it's eventually just like Uber, like PayPal, what was, kind of hush hush
fringe.
Fringe. It just, because it's so beneficial, it's very helpful. It's like something that people want to use, eventually just going to catch on to the point where it's like the whole prairie is on fire. You can't really put it out anymore. And that's why I think this is a grassroots movement, because I have so many doctors who approach me saying, hey, I have all these patients. I have 3-4 patients lined up. They all want stem cells. I don't know how to do it. Can you teach me how can I do this? So it's patients who are asking for it and who want it. Mm-hmm. And that's just, it's the way of the future. So no matter
Are these doctors' offices that you provide the stem cells for, or are they around?
Yeah. So there are a lot of doctors. Yeah. Some find me because I provide a lot of education. I founded an academy, American Academy of Integrated Cell Therapy. So if anyone's interested, they can go on the website, aaict.org. So on the website, there are actually a lot of case studies that shows what people's experiences have been. So this is an educational site. There are also scientific articles that are cited. So a lot of doctors want education, or they heard about another doctor having success treating patients and then realized where the cell sources are. So they found their way to me. So they want training. They want to, be able to do this for their patients. Because I can't think of anything more frustrating than being a doctor and can't help your patients, that you don't have the tools. Mm-hmm. That's one way to want to quit medicine, frankly. And actually, when I was in medical school and when I was at the VA, seeing all these veterans, having backs and medications, really how effective are you at being a physician when all you're doing is just throwing medication after medication, one medication side effects, then you give another medication to counter that. So every veteran, when they come in, these are veterans, they're, 50, 60, up to 80, 90 years old. And each one will have a bag of at least 15 medications, if not 35. So that's that. Everyone comes in with a big plastic bag. So it's really sad. I mean, really, what are we doing? Are we really prolonging health? And are the primitive cultures, what about those people who lived for a long time? Do they have medications to sustain them to get there? Like, what are we doing wrong? So
I feel like we're trying to add on things instead of strip away what, and like figuring out, like doing like assessment, like what is working and what is not working. And like, I'm very happy that this is available. I'm alive right now when we discovered, because I guess like umbilical cords and that sort of thing just got thrown away, back in the day. Like mine, I guess ever since I was born, we could use those umbilical cords to heal somebody.
We could.
You know?
There are a lot of missed opportunities. Yeah. I think the Africans were actually using the amniotic membrane to heal wounds. And they put placenta on top of, wound,
Really?
skin wounds. So they know the healing properties in these early birth tissue.
They're forced to try different things like that. Whereas in Western modern medicine, you just go based on what you were taught in the book and less experimenting with that.
And what's interesting is I just did a video on Tony Robbins' book, Life Force, which I think is a fantastic book. But when it comes to stem cells, because I know so much in this area, so I'm seeing all these things that are not quite correct. And it's unfortunate. So I want to share with people. One thing that's unfortunately not correct was thinking that stem cell therapy using umbilical cord was somehow illegal. It was never illegal, but there's no, it was considered a gray area, just like ozone therapy, like a lot of naturopathic therapies. No one said it's legal. No one said it is illegal. But at least in 2017, the FDA was coming up with a policy saying, well, if you are using cells that are extracted and then you're not manipulating it by putting chemicals or enzyme into this extraction, and you're not growing them into huge numbers, and which can cause cell degradation, then you're doing tissue transplantation. That's not a drug. And as a doctor, you can do tissue transplant. But if you're manipulating it, changing it, then yes, you need to apply for drug studies, because then you're making a drug. But most companies who want to give a lot of cells, they go overseas, because earlier studies were showing that they had to give, they were using expanded cells. So cells that have been growing in culture. So they were giving it at certain dosages. And so that's where the idea of a certain dose of, how many million cells per kilo of body weight, and you have to give that much. That's how it came about. So people think that, okay, you have to adhere to that kind of number. But the truth is, when we're using native cells at much, much lower doses, like what you received, it's a fraction of what those research were recommending. And look at what happened, right? So the proof is in the pudding. So you need to look at what the body's doing with the amount of cells you're giving. So a lot of people think that they have to go overseas because they want to receive the huge number of cells. But the problem is that those numbers are cells that have been expanded and grown and have senesced. So there's cell senescence going on when you grow them in culture, and they start to express surface markers showing the characteristic of who they were, as a donor, right? The donor cells, if you put in a body, the donor somehow is able to work with you. But if you grow them outside in the petri dish or in the culture medium, in an incubator, there's no such information that they need to adapt to. So, and it's actually stressful for the cells. So the cells start to, feel stressed. And in the process, they will differentiate. They will, instead of dividing into perfect duplicates of itself, which is a stem cell, they often divide into a daughter cell, which has gained certain functions. They're trying to, gain more functions. And in that process, they express these surface markers that can cause immune rejection, right? You just express the characteristics of who the umbilical cord was from. And then all of a sudden, you're giving it to a new person. A perfect example is that when you transplant bone marrow, if it's between two adults, you have to do a match, almost perfect match. But even a perfect match, there's a chance of rejection. But if you transplant umbilical cord blood, which has very similar composition as the bone marrow, but if you don't even consider matching it. You get it from the umbilical cord, you didn't match it, you give it to the person, no matching, and there's less chance of rejection than a perfectly matched bone marrow. So that shows you how young cells, how they're different from matured adult stem cells, even though they're all stem cells.
That was one of my questions. Like, are you ever worried about rejection from the stem cell donor, and also how many how many stem cells are in a CC? Because I think I got like 3 CCs via IV, and how many stem cells are in a CC?
So
because the people who are going internationally are kind of tricked by the numbers. Like, oh, we'll give you 20 billion. Well, they're only giving you 10 billion or whatever it might be.
Yeah, the general numbers overseas, I think people are running between 100 million to 300 million. So that's the general numbers. That's in the ballpark of what the research will be suggesting. But from what we're doing here, the number will be around 20 to 50 million. So it's a fraction of what's going on, maybe 1/6 of what's used overseas. But the results we're seeing are just as good, if not better. Definitely way less side effects. Almost no side effects. I barely see any issues, partially because we have the product from, that I'm using, that I've developed, is that there's high concentration of mesenchymal stem cells. And these are cells that are what's called immune evasive. So they're almost like they don't cause a problem with your immune system, but they also have a way of calming the immune system. So these cells can be given to somebody who just received organ transplantation. And that actually helped prevent them from rejecting the organs. So these cells are hugely beneficial in, reducing this excessive reaction of your immune system. Think about COVID. It's not the COVID virus that's killing you. It's your own zealot, immune reaction that's causing the problem. So, the high concentration of the mesenchymal stem cells is what's able to calm the system. But if you're using a product like a pure cord blood product that has very few MSCs, mesenchymal stem cells, then you have a much higher chance of having immune rejection. So people don't understand that different products are different. You need to look at what kind of cells are in there, even though they are all stem cells, because they all have stem cell characteristics. But there are hundreds of different kinds of stem cells in your body, maybe even more. It's almost like a gradation. Before a original embryonic stem cell or pluripotent, very, very early, cell that have huge potentials to develop into any organs, from that cell all the way down to a cell that's about to be developed into your organ specific cells. Let's say your liver cell, right? There's liver stem cell that's just ready to, one step away from becoming a liver cell. And that's a stem cell. But does it have a potential to develop into bone or for, or your stomach lining? No, it's a very, very specialized stem cell. So that all the way down to that level, but that came from the very, very wide capabilities of the early stem cells. But every step of the way, the cells will gain function and lose potential. But then it's a continuum. Where we're capturing stem cells anywhere in this continuum, and they're all stem cells. But there's so many of them. Mm-hmm. Mesenchymal stem cells are the most famous because they are proposed to be named medicinal signaling cells by Dr. Kaplan, who discovered these cells, because he believes the function of these cells is not to develop into your local stem cells, specific tissue cells. Is to send signals throughout your body to tell your body how to heal. So these are the immune, adaptive, immune, evasive cells. They're all around your blood vessels. So these are the cells that we have been using as kind of a gold standard. But this is one type of stem cells. So cord blood have some other types of stem cells. You need to look at what kind of cells you're getting. But the key is, if you're using mesenchymal stem cells, their capability is mostly, the benefit they're exerting is mostly because they're able to trigger your body to respond in the right way. They're telling your body to calm the inflammation, to break down the scar tissue, to promote more vascular formation, to, rescue cells that didn't have to die by sending out the right signals, or tell cells that need to die, like cancer cells, senescent cells, and tell them to die. And basically working with your immune system, communicating with your immune system, which is the most, the powerful mechanism for healing, right? For us to recover from any illness, infections, or cancer, or even just senescence from aging. So, these mesenchymal stem cells are the key. But other cells are important too. This is, we're still in the beginning of the science, but mesenchymal stem cells is the hottest right now. We have the most research on it, but are things going to change, evolve? Yes. And that's why it's so exciting. But with what we have, we can do a lot. And, you are one example of showing that it can, transform your life.
I can tell you lead up an institution of education because I feel like I got an education just right there. But it gives me so much more appreciation when I do know more about a subject of any kind. And it does make sense. I've heard that the reason why these stem cells are more useful is because they are from a successful birth, like a happy baby. And the donor mothers, they're from C-section.
Yes.
And
so they don't go through vaginal canal, which can be, full of bacteria.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good point too.
We're preventing that from happening because C-section is sterile surgical field.
And the reason why they don't use like embryonic stem cells is because a lot of births wouldn't turn out to be a fully functioning. So you might have a lot of senescent cells, or not really sure that.
Well, embryonic stem cells, I think, first of all, a lot of embryos don't become a healthy baby, right? And that's why there are a lot of miscarriages. Because it's not easy to form a perfectly functioning human being.
And so much of our body is made up of cells. Like everybody right now, I've heard, has little cancers in their body, but our immune system gets rid of them.
Exactly.
So it makes sense to have a lot of these cells that don't make it into a successful, healthy part of my body. So a lot of the embryonic cells wouldn't make a fully useful.
Yeah, a lot of things can go wrong. And, either from the environmental factors or from genetic factors. So a lot of these cells, they may not have the capability to form a perfectly, it's like clockwork, right? The most sophisticated clock you can imagine. So imagine if you are using embryonic stem cells that really hasn't been tested by fire. So you haven't really shown that you can't form a human yet. And then we're using you to try to heal, help a, fully formed human. But these cells can, go crazy. And that's really what they can do, form new cancer. So what's called teratoma. These are new uncontrolled growth that they don't know how to organize themselves. So they just form all kinds of tissues and they'll clump together. So you probably heard of women that have teratoma, instead of forming a baby, they have a tumor growing. So that's a potential problem. And that still till this day, we don't know how to control it. I think one reason is probably because some embryos are not meant to, actually form a full human being. They don't have all that takes. And embryonic stem cells, so we've heard of, instances where it's injected into people and then they end up getting a new cancer, new tumor. So that's one of the main concerns. Same thing with pluripotent stem cells that are kind of induced. So we can get your skin cell, let's say this scientist was able to revert it back to embryonic state and then use that as a stem cell to heal the person, right? That sounds perfect. But the problem is once you induce it back to the embryonic state, I think there are a lot of factors that we don't understand yet. We think we can, in a sense, play God, and do this maneuver. And then we got this, perfectly original state that can become anything. And it doesn't quite happen that way because the same thing can happen. The teratoma can still happen with these cells. So that's again, we haven't solved that issue yet. But if you use umbilical cord derived stem cells, these cells, even though they're very young and very primitive, way younger than the baby's cells. So the baby is born 0 day old, right? But these umbilical cord cells are actually younger than the baby cells because they were formed during embryogenesis. But because they're so much later in the evolution of the cells, they don't have the capability to go crazy anymore. And I think in a sense, they were also kind of proven, the full baby is formed,
right.
The baby is fine, so all the genetic, all the mechanisms are functioning just right. And then you're getting a cell from the cord that has been capable of providing, nutrients to a fully formed human being with the same genetic material. So it's almost like it's been tested.
Yeah, sounds the right way to go.
Yeah.
I've had a friend, like I said, just this week, who is getting stem cells from their own fat tissue or bone marrow, and it seems that. So I was told that the stem cells kind of know where to go to fix the inflammation, and if you just give yourself an injury, they're probably going to go fix that injury that you just worked on. I mean,
it's true. If you just
the majority ways,
I've discussed that in my lectures in different conferences. So it's great, and there is benefit, but it's true if you just extracted cells from your bone marrow, or you just did a liposuction to get stem cells out, and then you're putting the cells into a vein, hoping that they're going to help you with other conditions, but a lot of them will be attracted to the injury you just made. Mm-hmm. And then, and on top of that, your own cells are just more sluggish than the cells from the umbilical cord. Yeah. There's no way
decades
around
older.
it.
Yeah.
It's older, and it's proven by studies after studies that these cells are reduced in their capabilities, in their potency. So they don't secrete as much growth factors. They're not as neuroprotective. They have senesced. They're older. Their telomeres are shorter. So they simply are just, they don't have the younger.
Is the motivation to go to those places because it's less expensive or something like that?
It's not less expensive. It's very expensive. It's, some people they feel better about using their own cells. So even if their cells are older and less effective, they think that they're uncomfortable about getting something from another human being. I think it's, they don't realize that humans exchange genetic material all the time. And they found out that 60% of women actually have Y chromosomes in their body. And they couldn't account for that number by just looking at possibly there was genetic exchange if they were in the womb of the mother and there was a sibling that may have died, brother, or they had been pregnant with male children, but they didn't know about it because there's spontaneous miscarriages. They couldn't account for 60% of women having Y chromosomes. Wow. So the only explanation was that it's from sexual intercourse. So if you think of a sexual intercourse, that men and women are exchanging chromosomes, right? They're very, very different people, right? We have a whole chromosome that's different. But all these women are fine.
That's so interesting.
And, so it's, just like we carry so much bacteria in our body, right? 5 pounds. We've got all these critters in our body living with us. So having a minute amount of somebody else's DNA is really not as drastic as people think. And I've done IV infusions on myself every 3 months for the last now almost 8 years. I have not seen any problems. And I love having all this DNA in me. It's like, maybe I just, it's
teamwork.
Teamwork, exactly. Maybe I'm lacking in something, and help me.
Yeah, well, it's just in the biodiversity. I wonder if your immune system is a little bit stronger than it would have been otherwise, just because you are commingled, I suppose.
The thing is that the amount we're giving people is so minute. It's going to be. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit here and there, but I think on the whole scope of things, we have, how many trillion? 3.7 trillion cells, 37 trillion cells, and we're giving a fraction of cells. Even if they stay, it's not going to make as much impact as people think. But the healing effect is profound. Think about those, not that many cells. I mean, it sounds like a lot, 30 million, 40 million, but it's minute compared to how many cells you have in the body. But the effect they have on you, the impact is profound. Yeah. So this is really exciting time in our, in history that we're tapping into this blueprint of what made us, the intelligence that's in that blueprint, which is, in the stem cells, that they carry some of the intelligence.
Well, I'll tell you what, I can't wait to be able to get stem cells for just longevity purposes and health purposes, and rejuvenating all these older cells to help them be, rejuvenated younger cells,
And the research have shown that when you give animals, starting like middle-aged animals, rats or mice, you extend their lifespan by about 30%. So regular IV infusions of stem cells, it extends.
How regular?
Well, because they don't live very long, so they were giving. So these rats or mice,
of their lifetime.
they generally live for about 20 months on average. So they give them about once a month or twice a month. So it's kind of similar to what we're doing every 3 to 6 months for humans. So not only they live longer, who cares if they live longer, but they look terrible, right? But they are acting like they're healthy and young and vibrant, so that you extend the time that they're actually living a really good life. Yes. And then they,
That reminds me of my previous comment where I thought, is the point in my life over where I was able to run around, climb trees, run 5Ks, just go hiking with my buddies, and to know that it's just having that time period of my life, my health span extended, that gives me, more joy for life, and it gives me a lot more hope. And it's, for someone who lost hope, to be able to have more hope and to feel like, wow, this life does get better after this. That's one of those things and it comes from our mothers, the stem cells between a mother and a baby. That's really, really neat.
Exactly.
And
it's
so
a
powerful.
Simple transplantation from this early, human, this basically a byproduct of birth that we can give it to you and bring so much life back to you. It's incredible, right? Just one treatment. That was quite a while ago. You got one treatment and then you're vibrant, instead of relying on medication that we're trying. This is a drastically different way of healing the body.
That's awesome.
Exciting. Right?
How long is it going to take before we can all just really enjoy all of this stuff?
I think it's going to take shorter than we think. I'm definitely working hard in that direction, making sure that we are doing everything right. We're producing the product, under really strict criteria. We can show the FDA we're doing everything in a, highly responsible manner, and we can standardize everything we're doing. Once that comes through, I think there's going to be a point that the insurance companies are going to realize that we can save so much money by covering this. There are already insurance companies that are covering it. Very, very few companies, but you can see that these people are smart. They realize, oh my goodness, we can save so much money by preventing people from ending up getting surgeries. We're getting all these expensive drugs. We're getting cancer and chemotherapy. So you can really safeguard, you can basically grow your wealth, right? As an insurance company by covering these therapies. So it's going to come along.
I'm a big fan of preventative medicine. And that's why, if I get good sleep and I eat a healthy diet and don't put a bunch of inflammatory foods in there, I know that I'm not going to be sore. I'm not going to be more easily injured when I do those crazy things. So this is, so good. Well, awesome. I think that, you've got a flight to catch and I've got dinner to go. So
it's a good discussion.
Kind of impromptu getting together, but this has been so good. And I'm so happy that we met. And I'm so happy that I met first your stem cells, your source first, and then, can be able to share this with other people. Is there something that the general population can do to help this, I guess the knowledge? And sharing and watching this video is one way to do it. But, is it like when people write in their congressperson? Is it people who ask their doctor, do you know anything about stem cells? Do a lot of doctors know about stem cells or?
No. From the traditionally trained doctors, I think they have blinders on because the traditional medical system doesn't talk about stem cells very much. It's very, very few things that the doctors actually know. And they are given the impression that this is still very experimental, that there's not much evidence. I still hear that from patients who have talked to their primary care doctors saying, oh, there's no evidence it works. And my question is always, have you ever looked for the evidence? If you haven't looked, then I guess it doesn't exist to you. But Why don't you, what evidence would you like? Because I would love to send you articles. I would love to send you research from all around the world because the evidence is there. So unfortunately, I don't know what the percentage is. 90% of doctors really, they are still stuck in the traditional pharmaceutical system that they're not looking beyond. So, so if a patient wants to trust these doctors, trust their words, it's at their own peril because they might have missed really, really powerful healing potentials just because these doctors don't know what they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what can people do? Be educated. We are doing a study to help understand what stem cells can do for traumatic brain injury. So clinical studies, and we do want to help a lot of veterans, and we're hoping that if we can show that these stem cells can help veterans, first responders, that there's going to be a little bit more incentive for the government, the power to be, to want to do something about it. And eventually that there's going to be more support. Because now we're talking about people that we are emotionally attached to, and the politicians may be more willing to stand behind veterans, even if it's for their own political gains. So, I mean, that could be one way of helping things move forward, just a little faster, other than, people just started, to start using it. And, so it's everywhere to the point where that somebody is going to get help from it, right? Some congressperson, somebody in the government, their family is saved, their own life is saved. And then, maybe we can change legislation.
That's a good point. Because I chronicled my healing process, and I just remember this doesn't feel real, and I'm so happy that it's doing its job and its work. And I feel like just talking with you, this is a big step in the right direction, a big step towards healing. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to stop here. Thank you. Yes. And thank you everybody for coming along with us and go on this little journey about stem cells. And hopefully one day this is going to be everywhere. I know one day this is going to be as common and non-issue as antibiotics, that everybody before surgery, we're just going to get some stem cells so you get healed so much faster, so much better. Or if you get sick, just get some stem cells. You're going to heal so much better. And, you're going to avoid a lot of issues, even for infections that we've known, even with the recent, big epidemic. China has conducted research in very early stages using stem cells and getting people off ventilators within 6 days, and even people who are very sick and, elderly. So it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So hopefully, it's going to happen sooner than later. So, let's all push for this together.
That's here. Amen.